He's a disgrace. It's really sad. What else do we got here? Here we go. We're going to get into this tonight. Airlines prepare for nuclear war. Jets could continue to fly following an atomic blast as insurers scramble to combat escalating conflicts. Airlines are taking steps to ensure that they can keep flying even after the outbreak of a nuclear war. Jets could continue to fly following an atomic blast under special insurance policies being drawn up to address the possibility of conflicts escalating in Ukraine and Kashmir.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I have to tell you that we see this, and I see it as we all have, as the unfolding of what he promised and the nature of the power of not just a personality, but a man who has proven to the world that he does what he says he's going to do, that he's got the skill to be able to bring it about, and he brings the respect that is required for other nations to take us seriously and to negotiate seriously, and for our enemies to understand that they have no choice but to back off, to do as we request of them, so that they too can have a better future. And we see this in the way that he's been treated. And as you've noted here in the Middle East, my goodness, millions of lives destroyed because of a few bad actors, if you will, groups that pop up, the citizens of these nations being harmed because of a dynamic of a world that feels as though it can do nothing and allows this to become the status quo. It takes Donald Trump to say enough is enough and to demand new ideas so that every nation, not just in this region, but around the world, can recognize that things can be better, that life can be better, and that he can show them the way. And in this case, it's about business dealings. It's about becoming partners with nations in this region, making sure that people, certainly that Americans benefit, but that when Americans benefit and America is great again, the rest of the world has a path to follow. That's Donald Trump. I've seen it in every stop, and it is also manifested through the work and the understanding of that vision by Marco Rubio and our foreign policy. It's an exciting time. Our generation will see the benefits of this, and we're really blessed to have Donald Trump leading the nature of what the future is going to look like for us.
The truth about where America is going. Welcome back to Truth Thursday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and Roku. The new golden age. That's the destination those of us that voted for the policies of Donald Trump seek. And we are very sincere about it. This means we seek peace instead of war, strength instead of weakness, prosperity instead of economic despair, fairness in hiring and academic institution acceptance through meritocracy, not by race or sex, and putting Americans first instead of illegal aliens. Well, how are we doing? Well, if you ask the lamestream media, terrible. We just did a show yesterday on fake polls and showing that the corporate pollsters, the pollster cartel, are a bunch of liars. If you ask our adversaries, we're bullying them through our tariff program, an amazing program that we're going to talk about today. And it's been implemented to finally rebalance trade for the United States and take care of American workers. If you ask the Democrats, we're going to hurt people with the Doge cuts of fraud, waste, and abuse. Are things perfect? Of course they're not. But the direction we're going as a country and as human beings is into that new golden age, and it shows. Well, my guest today is former Trump campaign surrogate, entrepreneur, and political strategist Autry Pruitt. Autry is a distinguished political speaker, author of Planes, Steak, and Water, Defending Donald Trump. What a great title. Co-founder and president of Spencer Pruitt, Capital Markets Consultants, and media commentator renowned for bridging divides across America. Autry, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir. It's good to see you again.
It is good to see you, Colonel Maness. It's been a minute. I first met you in Louisiana almost 10 years ago. So it is definitely a pleasure to see you thriving and your influence has grown globally. And it's certainly an honor to be here today, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. And as has yours, man. I couldn't think of a better person to want to talk to about what's going on right now at this moment with the 47th president and his team going around the world. Am I right? We're entering that new golden age, that goal that he set. That's our slogan, our motto. We're there, and we're getting stronger and stronger every day. From your perspective and what you know about him and his policies in America, am I right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. Under the previous Biden administration and then the previous Democrat administration, Obama, prior to Joseph R. Biden Jr., under those previous Democrat administrations, they were going around the world preaching to the world. They were going around the world telling the world, you need to accept men as women and women as men. You need to get rid of your religion. You need to get rid of your customs, your tradition, your thoughts. But President Trump is going around the world saying, we represent our own, our America, our traditions, our thoughts. And you allow us to have our traditions. We allow you to have your traditions. And together we can come and do great things globally. That's very different positioning than what we saw from the Democrat Party previous to now.
Yeah, it's even different than what we've seen from all previous administrations, especially the latter half of the 20th century, isn't it? I mean, the president to see him say to people in Saudi Arabia, in Syria, in even in Iran, that we're not here to tell you how to live your lives. We just want to do trade with you. We want to. In Saudi Arabia's case, sell you our weapons so that you're strong and can help maintain the peace. So we're not having to bomb countries into oblivion. That's amazing, man.
You're right. And we're not having to take our taxpayer dollars to defend places that should be able to defend themselves, or their neighbors should be able to help them. So Trump is saying, yes, we have the weaponry, Saudi Arabia. We'll sell it to you so you can help calm some of this crap in Europe that's going on, or in Northern Africa that's going on.
Absolutely right. So I mentioned the media in my opening monologue, and I've been watching you. You've basically been a mentor to me since I entered politics because I've watched you both in the media, deal with the media, talk to crowds, message people over the internet and different shows and those kind of things. So how can we combat this corporate legacy media false narrative that they just insist on continuing to push, even to go so far as to pay pollsters to skew polls to make this guy named Trump look bad, when what's really happening is the actual machinations of governing and making deals with other countries that are good for us?
First of all, thank you so much for the kind words. I definitely look up to you in service to our country. So the fact that a service member who's defended our country so greatly has given me the honor of the words you just did means a tremendous amount to me. And I'm going to clip that and put that on our website. I'm going to get my staff to do that. So I appreciate that, Colonel. The answer to your question is there's three things that we can do. From a personal perspective, we just got to turn it off. One of the things we got to do from the right, in terms of us personally and even our institutions, is stop quoting CNN. Sometimes you'll hear the right you'll say, oh, well, even on CNN, they said so and so. That's what they do. They give us a little glimpse of truth, and then we quote them, which give them legitimacy. We can't provide legitimacy to these left-wing crazy media organizations. We just can't do it. So one, just turning them off and refusing to give our eyeballs to them will help in some cases, but not in all. Number two, be ready with the facts at all times. Watch shows such as Rob Maness Live and be ready from the facts you learn from the show. So when you're out and about, and it's not usually your friends, someone say, oh, well, I heard on CNN such and such, or I heard on MSNBC such and such. You have the facts ready in hand to say, no, that's not true. And this is why, point A. This is why, point B. So we have to be personally ready. Number three, if we have children in our home, we need to constantly be pushing back against, and I know this is probably going to come up later, pushing back against the left-wing stuff that comes out of academia and the public school system or in the university education system comes into our kids. We need to push against it. You don't push against it by yelling at kids and telling them they're wrong. You push against it with facts. If we continue, those are just a few of the things that we can do to begin to push back against this legacy media. And then from a corporate perspective, what we got to do is we got to ignore them. We got to stop cross promotion. And one of the things I'm always surprised is Fox News and even Newsmax. Sometimes they're seeking cross promotion on CNN, cross promotion on MSNBC. Why? Why even put their garbage on your network? Even if it's to show how dumb they are. You know, it's back in the day when people used to run for president, you would never mention the opponent's name. Remember that? You would say, my opponent. You'd never mention their name. It's sort of that same way we need to start saying, well, on that other crappy network over there, they're saying X, Y, and Z. But stop giving them legitimacy. That's one of the ways we can push back.
Now, you might see some clips in this show from CNN, but they're for a purpose.
I understand.
So let's talk about economics here for a little bit, starting with the Middle East trip. From your perspective, I mean, you're an economics professional in that world. I am not. I got a B in macro and micro in college, so I am not. But I have an anecdotal understanding and a really good feeling about what I'm hearing from this trip to the Middle East. Are these deals as good as I feel they are, or am I just wishful thinking?
No, I think they are good as you feel they are. They're certainly set up to be that way. The proof is going to be in the execution of the deals, right? So you have two world leaders come together and they execute a deal. Then can the bureaucracy in Saudi Arabia and can the bureaucracy in the United States execute those deals? That's what we're really concerned with, because one of the problems the U.S. has had is that when you've had a conservative president, and sometimes those conservative presidents, rather moderate conservative or ultra conservative, have executed a free market but fair free market deal, the bureaucracy comes along and changes the deal. So the public thought the deal was going to be one way, and then years later, you're finding this out with USAID, for example, or the United Nations, you find out that the bureaucracy that was in charge of implementing what the president said altered course. So I'm confident in what President Trump is doing with the royal family in Saudi Arabia, what he's doing across Qatar, etc. But the question is, will the bureaucracy hold the line? Now, when I say bureaucracy, I'm not talking about the bureaucracy of the actual top secretary that's politically appointed, confirmed by the Senate, or even the deputy. I'm talking about the general manager, the meat and grunt coordinator, the clerk. Will they be in line with the administration position and push forward? That's where I'm a little bit concerned that if things aren't done at the bureaucratic level correctly, it may not flush out. But all in all, your feeling is right. The question is, can the execution follow what Donald Trump and these world leaders have come to agree upon?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about big things, Autry, like this billions of dollars to Boeing, as much as I'm not very happy with Boeing right now for not being able to make Air Force One 747s in a timely manner and do some other things. That's good for America. you're talking about tens of thousands of jobs, and these are manufacturing jobs. So I'm excited about that if it's done, like you said, the right way. And we know we have resistors in the federal bureaucracy in that category, down at the manager level.
That's right.
And below. So we got to watch out for that. And these appointees have got to take care of that. We've got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about this China trade deal with you, get your thoughts on that and what our expectations should be, because I'm excited about it. I was very surprised that he got him to come to the table at all. We'll be right back with Autry Pruitt on the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
One of the things I think that could be most exciting for us and also for China is that we're trying to open up China, because as you know, many years ago we opened up the USA. Now it's time for China to open up, and that's part of our deal. And we're going to open up China. To me, that's the most exciting part. But yeah, we made a deal. The relationship is very good. I've always had a good relationship with President Xi. It was interrupted because of COVID, obviously. But outside of that, I've always had a great relationship, a lot of respect for him. And we'll see how that all works out. But we have the confines of a very, very strong deal with China. But the most exciting part of the deal, it was mentioned, but we don't talk about it yet. That's the opening up of China to U.S. business. And that would be like opening up a whole new world. And I think it would be even better for China.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast, and it's Truth Thursday. And we're talking about the truth of is the golden age happening? And with current events going on with the president's trip to the Middle East and all of these huge economic deals. And my guest today is Autry Pruitt, who's an entrepreneur and a capital markets guy in his own right, and has done a lot of work in that space. And Autry, just before we came on the show live, breaking news about, and I haven't been able to confirm this, so I'm going to report it unconfirmed, that India has put dropping all tariffs with the United States on the table as part of their negotiation. That's huge right there. But this China deal is really big because of the status of the imports that the United States brings in and the people of the United States buy from China. And the fact that I think what the president said there was that opening China means our products will be able to be imported into China for sale. Is that accurate? Did I pick up on that correctly? Because that's a big deal, right?
Yeah, you're right. That's a definite big deal. I think the news with India is a big deal as well, because both of those countries make up almost half the population of the world. So I think that is extraordinary news. One thing we got to remember about China, and this was what's crazy that was being said. People were like, oh, China's going to squeeze the United States. This was mostly left-wing media garbage. But even in the conservative media space, China was going to beat up the U.S. in the trade war, etc. But people forgot. Some people didn't know the economics of China. They forgot that China was suffering a property market crisis. One of their biggest, I think it's called Evergrande, one of their biggest real estate developers went bankrupt. And when you see, similar to the 2008 recession, when you see real estate start to shift dramatically, that's a sign that the economy is on the brink. Consumer confidence in China is at a record low because of the rising unemployment. They've got a significant aging population because of their their one-child policy, right?
Right.
And so because of that, they have demographic challenges. So when the U.S. went and upped the tariffs, the facts are China couldn't hold the line. So although it was the great Democrat wish, the great establishment Republican wish, the great wish of the Bush years that China would crush the United States and make Trump and those who support Trump-like policies or America First policies quiver in the corner, it turns out to be the exact opposite. And by the way, India is suffering some problems too. That's why India was so quick to say, you know what, let's get this negotiation, let's get this deal done while the getting is good.
Yeah, I mean, as good as India is, and their people are a great workforce in the tech business and all kinds of businesses. Really, they have a huge poverty problem there, and illiteracy and those kind of things. So their numbers, their purchasing power is probably not as great, but they overcome that with their numbers. How does in China? The question I have is, we talk a lot about shipbuilding on this show because I'm trying to highlight and advocate for increasing U.S. shipbuilding, not just the Navy, although the Navy needs to fix its problem, but more importantly, sea lift, merchant marine ships, civilian ship carriers, and those kind of things, because China can build 1,740 ships a year to our 5. They have the workforce to do it. They have the shipyards to do it, and we've just let ours atrophy over the years. How do they keep that workforce going? I guess with the problems of the one-child policy, the aging population, and their economic system really on the verge of collapse. I think, from what I hear, and I think it's centered around this Evergrande issue with the real estate thing. But how do they keep doing that?
Well, there's 3 areas the way they keep doing it. One way is shipping for them is a military issue, even if it's a civilian issue. It's a government military issue. So unlike here, China's government steps in and augments a lot of things, right? They augment a lot of things. It's sort of like D.C. When the rest of the U.S. is going to crap, D.C. is still flourishing, parties are still going on, property values are still up because the government is subsidizing the losses going on in the economy. So with the shipbuilding, because that's one of the critical infrastructures, as well as other chip making and some others, the government is stepping in and subsidizing even more than they normally do. So that's one way they do it. The second way is China has made great advances in AI. Let me rephrase that. I don't want to say artificial intelligence. Automation. That's the better way to say it. Automation intelligence. Automation intelligence. In other words, where they see when they see that, we have an aging population on the line, we have 15, let's innovate for the next year or 2, and now we can shift that to robots, right? So now we can reduce that workforce from 10 to 2. We'll go with the youngest 2, get rid of the old 8, and the youngest 2 are just engineers managing a robot that's putting together ships. So automation is another way they've been doing it. And then next, they've been striking some outside deals with Russia, keeping Russia's economy afloat to manufacture some items in the former USSR, some items, but very few, but some items in Iran, very few items, but some in North Korea to augment a little bit. That is probably the least had the least effect, but that's one of the things that China has started to do, as well as relationships with Vietnam and some other countries as well.
Yeah, and they've pushed into the Middle East and Southwest Asia through Iran and Pakistan,
and on the continent of Africa.
And Afghanistan too, right? And Africa too, right?
And the continent of Africa, that's correct. The continent of Africa, a lot of the some of the advanced ship parts, particularly electronically, need certain precious gems to work, tungsten, etc. And so they've been working with some of the African nations to do that, to augment what they're losing there. The bottom line is, even though their population is aging, even though they're having a restrictive economy, they're putting emphasis in their economy in certain sectors to remain powerful while they try to make up and correct. And if you're already building what you said was 1740 ships to R5, right? Well, it used to be 1900 ships to R5, right? So they're still going to outpace us. Even if they get down to 1,000, they're still ahead of the game. For them, it's a problem, but they're still outpacing us. So it takes a long time for the behemoth to die, right? And so the question is, can the behemoth give itself some resuscitation before death?
And to challenge that behemoth, President Trump's approach, look, economic security is national security and foreign policy security. It's all about economic security. And the thing that saved us in World War II and really saved the world, because we even built the Soviet Union's military gear that they used to drive the Nazis out of the East and take Berlin. And that is our manufacturing base, not a military one, but a civilian manufacturing base that was diverse and consistent and very large across the United States in the 1930s. We've let that go since this whole business really with China. I think that was the centerpiece of that. So, how are these terrorists going to help us rebuild our manufacturing base? Because I know that's a goal of the Trump administration, is to reestablish manufacturing base in this country.
Yeah, well, I alluded to it earlier. Most people, when President Trump says manufacturing, they're thinking of the old line workers, industrial workers, smoke, coal coming up. That's what the left wants you to think. But manufacturing also means automation intelligence within manufacturing. So it's not necessarily manufacturing jobs where somebody has an old hammer and sickle, no pun intended, right? It's also manufacturing in robotics. Right now, manufacturing jobs also include robots, which include engineers. So when Trump says, we're bringing back manufacturing jobs, that's also engineering jobs. And how does that help push back against China? China has some advanced, and as you know this by looking around an engineering classroom, China has advanced education in STEM. So one of the things that we've got to do is up our STEM level education, which, by the way, helps the manufacturing jobs. I was touring a plant where we have a client here at Spencer Pruitt coming up. They haven't signed with us yet, so I can't say the name. But I was touring their plant facility. They make all sorts of medications. I was touring their plant facility with my partner yesterday. And one of the things I noticed was that it's a manufacturing facility. But the majority of the people that were working there were actually engineers. Now, when you say engineers, you think, someone that's been in school for 8 or 9 years. No, engineering now is so broad. There's engineers that have a master's degree in biochemical engineering that have sat in a classroom for 8 years, done a thesis or more than that, and got a PhD. But there's also engineers that's almost like a plumber. It's a trade where they've been trained in mechanical engineering for about a year and a half. Right. So that's one way we will insulate ourselves. When we think about manufacturing jobs, it's not the old hammer and sickle anymore. It's the guy that says, no, I'm not going to go sit in a classroom for 4 or 5 years and listen to pontification, but I will go someplace for 12 months to 18 months and learn engineering concept to deal with machinery. And then it builds, it's like learning a piece of software, right? It builds on itself. Yeah. You learn one machine, and then eventually when another machine gets a problem. So I went to this facility, and all their engineers, I don't really like to talk about race this much, but I just want to illustrate a point. All their engineers were African Americans, right? They had been through between 2 and 3 years of engineering education, and they're all making $150,000 plus a year, right? So
that's fantastic.
We don't need so these are when you begin to rethink about these, when you begin to change the framework, the context of what you're looking in, then you understand that manufacturing jobs is no longer, and that's how that pushback against China happens. That's how we fight China, that we invest in engineering, we invest in STEMs, we invest in chemical engineering from a vocational standpoint to be able to stand up internal manufacturing. We can do that here.
Yeah, we can do that. And we can have more slots if we stop importing Chinese students to come to our program.
Yeah, and it's a myth.
Because we do.
You're right. I was talking to the director of operations at this facility, and it's a myth that you need somebody that's had 5 or 6 years education to run and fix the machines. He's like, no, I don't need that. I need someone I need them to understand reading, writing, arithmetic, addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication, basic up to 8th grade. And then I need to be able to read and conceptualize drawings, right? I need them to have a free mind to be able to think a little bit beyond just what's in front of their face, right? Some spatial reasoning. And if I get that, these engineers are great and they're happy. They come in their jobs at 9:30 to 5, and they're also valuable. They're not dispensable. They're not a hamburger flipper that you can just change over by getting another person in, right?
These are long-term jobs.
Long-term jobs, and they're grow. Like, for example, he said this particular engineer, his name was Ricardo, that I met, is so good, right? This one guy, there's several of them, but the one I met, Ricardo, is so good that there was a problem they were having with the machine. He not only did he fix the problem, but the manufacturer machine said, wait, how did you fix that problem? Right. And so they're relying on him to fix the problem for the entire manufacturing process.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we got to take another break. Exactly. American workers. We got to take another break. And I want to shift the conversation a little bit, but what we're discussing still applies because, we've got to take a look at race in some of this because the president's new policies are trying to eliminate the concept of taking account of race and looking at meritocracy. So race, sex, all that stuff's out the window. But some universities really are trying to push it harder. We'll be right back with Autry Pruitt.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Democrats be complaining about Harvard, like 96% of the political contributions from the faculty go to Democrats from Harvard. There's no diversity of thought among the faculty there. And by the way, I should say, I've had some experience with it. I was a fellow at the IOP. Kristen was as well. I taught a class at the Harvard Kennedy School for a number of semesters. I had a good experience, but I think...
But no diversity of thought, apparently.
But I think in recent years, particularly since October the 7th, the civil rights of these Jewish students on campus have clearly been violated. I don't think the university, Harvard, Columbia, a lot of these other Ivies have taken near enough steps to protect these students. They've been chased around campus, barred from buildings. Buildings have been taken over. I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on. And here's the deal. They take federal money. They have a $53 billion endowment. They take federal money. If you want to continue to take federal money, you're going to have to listen to the people who dole it out. And that's the Trump administration who are standing up for these Jewish students. If they want to give up the federal money, you can create, I guess, the culture of hate that you want, and that's fine. But right now, they're entangled with the federal government, and they're going to have to deal with the president.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and the question is, are we really entering that golden age that President Trump talks about, that those of us that voted for his policies are expecting to happen, and we're seeing it emerge before our eyes. But we still have to talk about some things because, like you just saw in that clip there, a school as once great as Harvard University, and I was a student at the Kennedy School. I have a master's degree from the Kennedy School that Scott Jennings was talking about there, but they've never invited me to be a fellow at the Institute of Politics because I'm a conservative, Republican, American, white male politician. I don't know how he snuck in. He must have been a leftist at that time. Anyway, my guest is Autry Pruitt, who is a former Trump campaign surrogate and author of a great book, and an entrepreneur and a professional in the economic world. And we had a great conversation in the last segment about manufacturing and the types of jobs we're talking about when we all talk about rebuilding our manufacturing base. And Autry, I have to, there's a lot of news breaking around Harvard in the last 24, 48 hours. So I wanted, and you were on the MAGA side, and the center right piece of American politics. You were one of the people that broke ground on destroying this race barrier thing for the Republican Party, especially in my opinion. You are one of those people that helped do that, and I think we have broken it, and we're seeing the positive effects of that now, and probably men and women that work the kind of engineering jobs you said you were talking about in the last segment are part of that population that have seen what they need from government and politicians to serve their interests, their American interests, and their economic interests before we serve anybody else. So this whole thing with Harvard violating anti-discrimination law. Look, anti-discrimination laws, that type of law is okay in my book. But you can't discriminate against anybody based on race or gender or sex and those kind of things under those laws. And they're doing it. He was talking about Jewish students there, but it just broke yesterday. Chris Rufo broke it from the Manhattan Institute that their faculty hiring guide put white males at the bottom of the pile, no matter how they performed in their resumes. So with that kind of stuff going on, we have to continue to support President Trump's policy pushes into these spaces, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely have to continue to support his push in these spaces. But what we really must support fundamentally is the core idea that an individual can achieve and work and do what they can be successful with, that God has given them, and they should be awarded and placed accordingly. That's what we must fundamentally, accept. That everybody has gifts, everybody has talents, and what you can achieve and do, you should be able to do. And the easiest way I explain this, the easiest way I deal with anybody of my colleagues on the left that start to get into this whole pushback against meritocracy, I tell them real simple. Nobody's would enjoy any sports game, whether it's a female sports game or male sports game, if there was quotas based upon pigmentation or even based upon geography. Nobody would enjoy it. The reason why sports is so great, the reason why, and this goes around the world, the reason why sports and physical aptitude is so great and so competitive is because you get those who have achieved and gone through on an equal field, an equal opportunity field, and have reached the pinnacle, right? And they operate and they work and they achieve. And it doesn't matter what their skin color is. It doesn't matter where they come from, right? We've seen, for example, recently a breakthrough of Chinese basketball players within the NBA and worldwide. Yeah. Why? Because China originally didn't study the sport, didn't originate there, but they studied it. They got better and better and better. And now all of a sudden they're like, oh, they've got a bigger population to choose from. So statistically, they're going to have more people that can achieve and face off against American basketball players. So you're seeing that, right? You're now starting to see from our end, Americans break through into the soccer. I didn't mean to make it a sports show, but the point is that sports is a great illustrator of meritocracy. And I think a part of the problem is Harvard's had such a crappy football team and sports teams for years, with the exception of maybe Crew, right? Maybe Crew. Yeah. They've had such a crappy team for years that they don't even know what meritocracy is. Right, because they haven't recruited they haven't recruited their own sports team based upon merit. So Trump is correct to push back. I think we're all correct to push back, and it's actually sad to see what's happened to these institutions. And they also don't understand what that does to the minority communities. Because now when you're a student and you have achieved, when you're a student, you do deserve to be there. When you graduated and you did get that doctor job on its own, you have something somebody's wondering in their head. I mean, is this really the best doctor, or did he get here because he was darker than everybody else? That's not what you want.
That's the biggest concern I have. They did the same thing in the military service academies, and the president's now put out a policy, and SecDef Exeth has restated it in his memo just this week, that the service academies will only use meritocracy. They will not use any type of race or immutable characteristic like sex or any of that for quotas or objectives or goals to admit people into the service academies, which they educate our premier military leaders that are supposed to be the core of the career officers in all of our armed services at those service academies. And the last 5 years, they went down the road of having at the Air Force Academy, a female professor stood up at the beginning of a class and pointed to two white cadets and said, males, and said, okay, you're white guy number one and you're white guy number two. If I did that with anybody, women, Black Americans, Chinese Americans, Indian Americans, Native, anybody, I would be fired if I did that. We can't allow that type of behavior in any of these institutions, and because exactly, if I'm fighting in a war and I've got a general or an admiral and I'm looking at him going, man, is that the best person for this job right now? Is my life at risk more because they might not be? Think about that. It's the same problem with the doctor. I
agree with you. One of the things we have to be comfortable with is disparity. It's okay to have disparities between industries. If you're saying 14% of the population is Black, 14% of the population in science doesn't have to be Black. 14% of the cooks don't have to be Black. 14% of it's okay to have disparities. At one point in time of the major financial firms, Black males and women were outrepresented. In other words, there were the higher percentage in finance, which when Kenneth Chenault was there at American Express, Charles Stanley was there at Merrill Lynch. At one time, it was like 17% versus the 13% population, right? We have to be comfortable with saying, hey, for a variety of different reasons. It's not because of race. It's not because, just for different reasons. And historically, you can prove some reasons why. For some different reasons, historically, groups of individuals, groups of certain pockets of communities have been better at certain things. For a long time, Black Americans excelled at basketball. Why? Yep. Black Americans were coming in. It was a cheaper sport. It was easier to get into. It required a basket and a ball. It wasn't golf. Yeah. It wasn't tennis, which often requires lessons, which often requires timing, getting to places. You can find tennis courts everywhere, but a basketball court you can make instantly in the street. You can't do that with a golf course. You can't do that with a tennis court. So naturally, soccer is a really good example of overseas why poor communities did so well in soccer in Latin America, because it was a ball you kicked around and you could learn to kick and dribble and move that football. Remember, this is soccer, so that soccer ball, you can learn to move it at any time, right? So there are reasons for pockets of I can go historically. We talk about Jews and financing and why there's sometimes outsides in banking. There's actually a historical reason for that. Right? It's nothing to do with racism. It's a historical reason why certain pockets of communities excel and do better in certain areas. And by the way, it always shifts and changes over time. You see it now more because of social media, right? Yeah. It's just like kidnapping. Everybody thinks your child's about to be kidnapped. Well, actually, there are half less kidnappings now than when I was a kid, right? It's just that now you see them all the time. So it feels like it's more prevalent. So listen, there's all of this race stuff, all the stuff about pigmentation, it needs to stop. If we return to those who can, those who do, and those who can't do something else, right? If we return to that, we're all better off as a society. Your kids will be happier. I'll be happier. And then when you do get the person who breaks through in an untraditional, if you will, area, it's celebrated to the hill because it's like, wow, we never, this was never thought.
Exactly.
Think about who was the tennis guy? The black, was it Arthur Ashe? Broke through in tennis, right? Wow. Tiger Woods golf. Wow. But you understood why. Yeah. When you read his background and said, oh, he grew up doing golf with his father over and over and over again, going to course after course after course. It makes sense. So we know all this to be true. We've got to stop letting ourselves be played by emotions. And I mean this from America globally. We got to let ourselves just be played by emotions and commit to the principle that we are all given strengths and weaknesses, some more than others, some less than others, by God, by our Creator. And
Absolutely
we should lean into those and be our best self.
Absolutely, man. Well, we got to take another break. When we come back, we still got a little bit of race talk to talk about because of these South African refugees. But it's more about the DOGE cuts and illegal aliens involved in Medicaid and those kind of things that I want to discuss with you to get your take on it. What the Republicans in Congress ought to be doing to fix this stuff, because they're not. We'll be right back with Autry Pruitt on the Rob Maness Show.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
About half of my district is on Medicaid. And the recent budget that is being discussed in the House right now would leave 50,000 people in my community without health insurance. So Secretary Kennedy, my question for you is, why do you think that a community like mine doesn't deserve access to that same basic health care provided by Medicaid that you benefited from?
I do believe they are. I do believe, and that is the design of the Medicaid program.
So do you disagree with the cuts that are being proposed for Medicaid right now?
Oh, the cuts to, this is I don't know if you understand this or whether you're just mouthing, the Democratic talking points. The cuts to Medicaid are for fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'll tell you what that means. It means that because of DOGE, we were able to determine, and it's about 8 million people who would be affected. Because of DOGE, we were able to determine that there are 1 million people who are claiming Medicaid from multiple states. That's illegal. It's theft. You're not allowed to do that. There are another 1 million people who are collecting both under Obamacare and Medicaid.
That has nothing to do with the budget that's
These
actually
are the only
being
cuts that are
proposed
being
in the
made.
House.
These are the only cuts that are being made to Medicaid.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. There are another 1 million illegal aliens. We announced a law yesterday, a rule yesterday, we're not going to pay illegal aliens anymore. And guess what Gavin Newsom did this morning? He said we're going to take all the illegal aliens off the California Medicaid rolls because the feds aren't paying for them anymore. So the compassion ends.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday, and we're talking some really good truths here today, and how America is entering that golden age that President Trump has promised, and that his team is working very hard on. And that we're all hoping for and wanting to participate in that golden age. And my guest today is Autry Pruitt, who is an entrepreneur, a co-founder of a capital consultants company, Spencer Pruitt, and an author of a great book You need to go out there and get that thing. And Autry, that clip there, when I saw it, I was like, he nails it.
Yeah.
A Kennedy nails it. You know what? I studied his dad's last campaign when in my first Senate race. I read the book as I was driving around Louisiana, asking people for votes and money. I think he channeled him, because his dad had the same view that we can help people, but we got to help the right people, the people that actually need it. And a lot of times the federal government's Leviathan doesn't hit the right target, and it just goes to waste. And that's exactly what Secretary Kennedy was talking about there. But my question, one of the questions I have is, that same congressman, the white gentleman right there, while he's fighting for illegal aliens to keep their Medicaid in his district, he opposes the refugee status of South African white farmers that really have a real asylum case, because they're being killed and and having their property taken away by the government, not just groups of people, but the government policy and everything. He will fight against that tooth and nail. They're even going to jail for it.
Yeah, these congressmen. First of all, it's important for your audience to understand, and hopefully you do have some members of your audience that may have a different sort of center viewpoint. They may come from a center left or a left wing perspective, but they're interested in your show. I want your audience to understand, and hopefully those viewers to understand, that this is a great illustration of these individuals on the left do not care about you. They use any talking point necessary, and there's no consistency in their thought process, no consistency in their argument. There's no consistency in their logic. They have none. And so his opposition to the South African refugees, as opposed to the Mexican refugees or the Haitian refugees or the El Salvadoran refugees or the Vietnam refugees or those from Colombia or those from China, his opposition to the South African refugees are based upon their light skin color. It's disgusting, really. And I think Trump let in 59 families total, about 130 people from South Africa.
Minuscule.
I mean, minuscule compared to the southern border, minuscule compared to the northern border of Canada. We actually have Canadian refugees. How you got refugee status as a Canadian, I don't even know. But we actually have some. Maybe that's something Doe should get into. I don't know. Actually, maybe under Trudeau, you could have gotten it. Maybe.
Well, they're turning a little left up there.
Right? So the bottom line, there's two bottom lines. The first bottom line is the guy's a joke. It's a race play, and it's cheap at that. And what sucks is, I think if I remember his district, he doesn't need to even play it. He's just doing it for camera to look good for his buddies and his friends. And then the second thing is to say, hey, we've got a home. We let in people from all over the country. We've let a lot of individuals in from Haiti. We've let individuals in. I know this. We've let individuals in from Nigeria. We let individuals from Uganda. President Biden let in a lot of Black individuals from Uganda, Africans from Uganda who are of Black pigmentation, because not all Africans, as you can tell, are Black. Right. So he let those with darker pigmentation from Uganda who have to be homosexual, because Uganda pushes back against the homosexual community. He let them in. And so Trump said, you know what? We've got some farmer families here who can farm and contribute here. They're being oppressed by the local government because of race. And it is. I mean, this is, listen, when I first heard about this story 5 years ago, I was blown away. And the first thing as I did is I picked up my phone and I called some individuals I know that live in South Africa that happen to be of dark pigmentation. And they said, oh, it's absolutely true. They even said what's happening down there is pretty disgusting. And these are not families that were enslaving people and creating apartheid. These are fresh 20, 30, 40-year-old families just trying to survive. And the government was just snatching their property and their land away from them with no compensation, not even with compensation. So, and Trump decided he's going to let in 59 families. I mean, if you want to have a compassionate heart, where is it? Right. So they're the Democrat Party, 90% of them they're just jokes. It's a joke. It's a race play. It's so they can get on the clips, and so they can, have the Hollywood red carpet, so they can feel important. And by the way, I bet you none of them are living in Harlem in New York City. None of them are living downtown Chicago. Right?
That's right.
None of them are living out, Houston, Texas, where Burns Barbecue is. None are living there. None are living that other side of Baton Rouge across that, I forgot that street barrier, a mile. No one's living there in Louisiana. I mean, come on, listen, you're from Louisiana. How many of these white Democrats, that, how many of them are living living in the Creole areas?
Exactly.
Come on.
Exactly right. And they're using that, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it, because I knew you'd have a great take on that. They're using that compassion piece that they like to beat people up with and gain power with and keep power with, to oppose the Doge cuts. And unfortunately, it's not just the Democrats. There's some Republicans. I saw a Republican politician on a show this morning that I was shocked that he was saying, I have a concern. 20% of my district is on Medicaid. And you just heard Secretary, I keep wanting to call him Senator, Secretary Kennedy say what the cuts are about. And the Doge program, I'm a big advocate of that, because I've advocated for getting rid of fraud, waste, and abuse in our spending, and thought there were trillions of dollars of that. And I still believe that. And I think they're right.
Colonel
so they're
Maness,
using it to highlight the wrong and to cut the wrong. Right.
The what? I don't even get angry at the Democrat politicians, because at least I know who they are when I see them coming. It's the Republicans who for years who said, I want fiscal responsibility. I want a balanced budget. I want to protect the homes. I want Americans to come. And then all of a sudden you get a president that says, oh, great, you want that, right? Well, we're going to start cutting. And now you got a problem. They're jokes too, right? They're jokes too. They like to say the conservative in name only. I call them Americans in name only. ANOs, which I can have another acronym for as well. They're ANOs. That's what they are. Americans in name only. Because
they're you get a guy like Chip Roy is the example of the right way to do this. He's out there talking about how this budget and this reconciliation bill has got to have the cuts added into it, and people are pushing back on it, and he's calling them out on it. We need more of people like that in Congress. I mean, look, I have no sympathy for Speaker Mike Johnson. I know him. He's a friend of mine, but he's got a monumental task, I should say, to try to get these cats all on this big, beautiful reconciliation bill. And it's a problem. But when it gets over to the Senate, you're going to have the Tom Tillises of the world and this other individual I was talking about, and I can't remember the name right now, that have a lot more power to push back against these cuts. And we can't end up with a big, huge budget bill without the cuts in it, right?
Yeah, you're correct. And Republicans should be on board with this. And it's just tired. This is part of why Trump won, why he continues to win. Yeah. Why, although there might be a little fluctuation in poll numbers here and there, for the most part, once you get rid of those fake polls you were talking about earlier, he's still on top, because the Republicans know that the establishment Republicans have been lying. They were lying about their commitment to Jesus Christ. They've been lying about their anti-abortion statements. They've been lying about balancing the budget. They've been lying about, they've just been lying about immigration over and over again. Republicans, I'm not even going to talk about Democrats, Republicans who for years have said, oh, I am this, I am that, I believe in this, I believe in that. And you pull back the curtain and they have been lying.
Absolutely right.
We, as part of the Republican base, I'm in the entrepreneurial base. True, I'm in a different class, a different section than most, as are you. But we're even tired of it. Yeah, right? We're even tired of it. And what's crazy is a lot of, if you look at where we fiscally are, personally, Colonel Maness, where we are, most Americans are not as fortunate as us. And it's true, the Democrat policies could actually be twisted, and the established Republican policies twisted to benefit us more.
Exactly.
But
Exactly
we
right.
actually say, no, no, no. Don't do it that way. Do what's right for the country as a whole, because in the long-term perspective, for our kids and grandkids, I don't have any grandkids yet. I think you do, right? If I remember correctly.
I do have
For our
5.
kids, yeah, I remember I met him at the
Yeah.
big table. We said it was great.
Yeah.
If we do, then we know America's going to be better moving forward. It's going to be better in the future. And so,
Absolutely.
the Republicans, a lot of these Republicans just disgust me more than the Democrats. And to be honest with you, I got into business largely. I was just tired, man. I saw people like you run for Senate. I remember supporting your race. Run for Senate.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
I saw you going hard, and I saw establishment Republicans, people who knew you, people who knew your record, knew your steadfast belief, ghost you.
Yep.
And I'm like,
right.
listen, if a man who defended if Colonel Maness can't get established Republicans behind him, then who has hope? So that's why I comment on it. I still support politicians. I do some strategy on the side, but I'm in the private sector now because I got tired of listening. At least in the private sector, if someone gives me a big F you, at least they tell me to my face. At least I know they're trying to do it in front of my face. They're trying to ruin my business deal in front of my face, not behind my back. So,
well,
I'd rather deal with the devil I know.
I appreciate you coming on, man. You can follow him at Autry on X. And thank you so much for coming on. Maybe before 26 gets here, we can do a political show about how we need to save Congress from itself because they certainly need to do that. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. God bless you. Thank you so much for your support. Keep doing what you're doing because the kids depend on men like Autry Pruitt in this country, folks. Monday is More War Monday. I'll see you then here on the Rob Maness Show at World View Tube.